Chapter 30 Self-Disparagement. Rama continued to speak. He said, "Seeing the world swallowed up in the abyss of hundreds of rising dangers and difficulties, my mind is immersed in a mire of anxieties. My mind wanders everywhere, and I am struck with fear at everything. My limbs shake with fear like the leaves of a withered tree. My mind is bewildered by impatience for its lack of true contentment, just as a young woman alone in a desert is afraid without her strong-handed husband. The thoughts of my mind are entangled in my desire for worldly enjoyments, like stags caught in a pit covered with grass. The senses of an unreasonable man are always running astray to the wrong and never turning to the right way. The eyes of a blind man lead him to fall into a pit. Human thoughts are linked to the animal soul like consorts to their lords. They can neither sit idly nor ramble at liberty, but must remain as wives under the control of their husbands. My patience is almost worn out. Like that of a vine under winter frost, it is decayed and neither lives nor perishes at once. Our minds are partly settled on worldly things and partly fixed on their giver. This divided state of the mind is called its half-waking condition. My mind is in a state of suspense, being unable to ascertain the real nature of my soul. I am like one in the dark who sees a tree stump in the distance and is deceived to think it is a human figure. Our minds are naturally fickle and wandering all about the earth. They cannot forsake their restlessness, as the vital airs cannot exist without being in motion. Tell me, O sage, what state of life dignified above the others is not associated with troubles, is unqualified by the conditions of humanity, is apart from errors, and in which grief is unknown? How have Janaka and other good men, conspicuous for their ceremonious acts and distinguished for their good conduct, acquired their excellence? O source of my honor, how can a man be cleansed who has smeared the dirt of worldliness all over his body? Tell me, what is the knowledge by which the serpents of worldliness can be freed from their worldly crookedness and become straight in their conduct? Tell me how the foulness of my heart, soiled by errors and tainted with evils, like a lake disturbed by elephants and polluted with dirt, can regain its clarity? How is it possible for someone engaged in worldly affairs to be untainted with its blemishes and remain as pure and intact as a drop of water on a lotus leaf? How can one attain excellence by dealing with others as with himself, and regarding others as property to be like straw and remaining aloof from love? Who is that great man that has crossed the great ocean of the world, whose exemplary conduct exempts one from misery? What is the best of things that ought to be pursued, and what fruit is worth obtaining? Which is the best course of life in this inconsistent world? Tell me how I can have knowledge of past and future events of the world, and the nature of the unsteady works of its Creator. Do so, that my mind, which is like the moon in the sky of my heart, may be cleared of its impurities. Tell me what is most delectable to the mind, and what is the most abominable, and how this fickle and inconstant mind may become fixed like a rock. Tell me, what is that holy charm that can remove this choleric pain of worldliness attended with numberless troubles? Tell me, how can I entertain the blossoms of the tree of heavenly happiness within my heart that sheds the coolness of full moonbeams? O you good men who are present here and learned in divine knowledge, teach me so that I may obtain the fullness of my heart, and may not come to grief and sorrow any more. My mind is devoid of that tranquillity which results chiefly from holy happiness. My mind is perplexed with endless doubts that disturb my peace like dogs molest smaller animals in the desert. Chapter 31. Rama's Questions. Rama continued to speak. He said, I have no trust in the durability of life, which is as transient as a drop of water on the edge of a shaking leaf on a lofty tree, and as short as the cusp of the moon on Shiva's forehead. I have no faith in the durability of life, which is transient as the swelling in the pouch of a frog as it croaks in the meadow. Nor do I have any trust in the company of friends, which is as dangerous as the treacherous traps of hunters. What can we do under the misty cloud of errors that raise our tempestuous desires, flashing forth in lightning bolts of ambition, and bursting out in the thunderclaps of selfishness? How shall we save ourselves from the temptations of our desires that dance around us like peacocks? How shall we save ourselves from the bustle of the world that breaks in on us as thickly as the blossoms of the kurchi plant? How can we fly from the clutches of cruel fate, who, like a cat, in the twinkling of an eye, suddenly springs upon its prey and kills the living as if they were poor mice? To what expedient, what course, what reflections, and what refuge must we have recourse in order to avoid the unknown tracks of future lives? There is nothing so trifling in this earth below or in the heavens above, which you gifted men cannot raise to consequence. How can one relish this accursed, troublesome, and vapid world unless he is infatuated by ignorance? It is the fusion of desires that produces the milky beverage of contentment and fills the earth with delights, like spring adorns it with flowers. Tell me, O sage, how is the mist of our desires, which darkens the moon of our intellects, is to be dispelled from our minds to make it shine forth in its full brightness? How are we to deal with this wilderness of the world, knowing well that it is destructive both of our present and future interests? Who is there who moves about in this ocean of the earth, who is not buffeted by the waves of his passions and diseases, and by the currents of his enjoyments and prosperity? Tell me, O best of sages, how one who has fallen into the furnace of this earth may escape unburned like mercury. How can one be rid of the world when it is impossible for him to avoid dealing with it in the same manner as it is impossible for aquatic animals to live without their native element? Even our good deeds are not without affection and hatred, pleasure and pain, just like no flame is unaccompanied by its power of burning. Without right reasoning, it is impossible to restrain the mind from thinking on worldly matters. So therefore deign to communicate to me the dictates of sound reason for my guidance. Give me the best instruction for warding off miseries, either by confronting or renouncing the affairs of life. Tell me about that man of enlightened understanding who attained the highest state of holiness and tranquillity of his mind, and the deeds and manner by which he achieved the same. Tell me, good sage, how the ancient saints fled out of the reach of misery, so that I may learn the same to suppress my false conceptions. Or, if there be no such knowledge in existence, or if there is, whether it is to be kept secret from me. Should I fail to attain that highest state of tranquillity, then I must remain inactive and avoid my sense of egoism altogether. I will refrain from eating and drinking even water, and from clothing myself. I will cease from all my actions of bathing and making my offerings, as also from my diet and the like. I will attend to no duty, nor care about prosperity or calamity. I will be free from all desires except that of the abandonment of this body. I must remain aloof from all fears, sympathies, selfish feelings, and emulation, and continue to sit quietly as a figure in painting. I will gradually do away with the inspiration and respiration of my breath and outward sensations until I part with this trifle, the seat of all troubles, this, the so-called body. I do not belong to this body, nor does it belong to me, nor is anything else mine. I shall be null and void like a lamp without oil, and abandon everything to do with this body. Valmiki describes the scenario. He says, Then Rama, who was as lovely as the moon and whose mind was well filled with reasoning, became silent before the assemblage of eminent men, like a peacock in awe, ceases his screaming before gathering clouds.